Yep.
Cool. Okay, let's go ahead and get started, and we'll continue to let folks trickle in at the beginning. But I made some of my club development committee members as co-hosts. If you could help let folks in, that'd be very helpful. And if I missed any of the committee members, apologies. So let's see. Okay, so we're gonna do some quick intros, quick presentation by the Go team, and then we'll go into our guest speaker to present about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then we'll also have a brief presentation about the recall and just discussion of going back to in-person and hybrid meetings. And then we'll take any other announcements from clubs, candidates, etc. at the end. So do we have any new club club presidents or new clubs in general that want to just do a quick intro? I see. Let's go ahead.
Hi, my name is Maz Hadik, and I'm the newly elected president of the Iranian American Democrats of San Diego, and glad to be joining you guys today.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands raised. Was there anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead. I don't know if, I think Deborah Skurnick was on, if you wanted to just, since I usually do a bit for party officers. I don't know if I can find you.
Good morning, Cody. Good morning.
Hi.
Yes, this is important information coming up for clubs.
I think, is it just me or did Deborah freeze? Hello?
And on the roster, you'll need to have some new information. So this part's important and it needs to be in a particular order. We're waiting for the state to send the templates out and we'll make sure all the clubs do get them. It'll be the first name, last name, full address, email, phone number, date of birth, which is new, gender, which is new, indicate your home club and which assembly district that you will be in. And then after that, the pre-endorsement conference right now is tentatively set for about mid-February. And the the endorsement convention will be next March. The primary right now is set for June 7th. It could change if the legislators move the date, which there's some talk, but right now it seems to be holding for June 11th. Just make sure you start filling up your clubs as much as possible because the last date you can add any new member will be July 27th. And if anyone has any questions, let me know.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks very much for sending me this info, Deborah. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Cody, can I ask Deborah a question? This is Narima.
Yeah.
Deborah, asking for date of births, there'll be a lot of pushback. We do not collect that on our membership form. We're going to have to go back and collect all of these date of births. I don't think the members are going to be very happy. Why do you need it?
I don't need it. The California Democratic Party needs it. And this is what they were requiring now. And they've been doing that actually for a while. They've been gathering that information. I think it has more to do with identifying who people are. If someone has a similar last name, sometimes I've even seen people with the same name living in the same household. So how do you differentiate which one's the Democrat or the no party preference? You do it by the birth dates. So that is why they are suggesting it. You will be able to get it when right now the CDP is working on where we can input all our information, check to see who is a Democrat, who's not, and we will be able to gather dates of births by then. But that is per the California Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
But Deborah, you have that access when you're checking people, whether they're Democrats or not, correct?
Actually, clubs will be able to do that too, I believe, through their county committees. I know which county we were, and I'm sure Cody's going to agree with me. They're going to make that accessible to everyone.
Yes, you can do that right now. All clubs are able to get an account with Vote Builder through our county party to do quick lookup on their members. So if you don't have that, I'm not the person that sets that up, but if you email clubs@sddemocrats.org, myself and our county party staff will receive it and they can help you get set up. And like Deborah said, it's really to help differentiate, you know, two people with the same name at the same address, but otherwise people's birth dates are pretty much available with their voter registration. So yeah, that's not.
But do we have to get people's permission? I mean, I have access to Vote Builder, but do I have to get people's permission to put their date of birth on a form? Because that is not what they're signing up for when they fill in the membership form.
I think that's up to your individual club. The clubs I have, we do ask for that on the membership form. So maybe you want to check with them to make sure and leave them off if they don't want to be submitted with that. But yeah.
But this is how we're going to be able to tabulate how many you have in each assembly district to confirm the identity of people, is what the CDP has been telling us, the regional directors and chairs.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Deborah.
You're welcome.
I have one question for Deborah, if I may.
Yeah,
Cody?
one sec. Tanara's hand has been raised, so I want to go to her first.
Okay.
Hi, so real quick, I just want to clarify. So this is to charter with the CDP. So
Yes.
our club, the Blue Dream Dem Club, is a charter.
Yeah, this is a separate, this is for the pre-endorsement conference, and it's separate from what the counties request every year. I know all of you have to go through chartering every year. This is a different roster, because I'm sure since you submitted your county roster, new members have been added to your club. So we want to make sure that everyone that should be counted is counted for the pre-endorsement conference.
Deborah, and is that roster form isn't available yet, like the template or whatever?
It is not. I've been hounding them. It turns out Emma Harper was on vacation this past week, but it's my understanding that it will be ready next week or so. And also will be a calendar of important dates that clubs will need to know. So the information is coming. I started the process earlier than many because I wanted to give all my clubs opportunity to make sure they were able to add as many to their rosters as possible.
Awesome. Okay, and then
It's simply our club.
Sinar, sorry, you're kind of breaking up.
Party pre-endorsements.
I didn't quite get that. Sinar, could you repeat that? It was kind of robotic.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
No.
Maybe type it in chat.
Yeah. I want to make sure we get through this quickly. So Wayne, you had a question?
Two questions. Deborah, did you say gender identity, that is self-selected identity?
Yeah, they're asking for gender as well, which is also on the voter form. So if you don't get it from individuals, you can catch it when you're checking their status as a Democrat.
Okay, and is there a website or a web page on the CalDem website for this information that I can refer to?
Actually, I have sent a PowerPoint to Cody, and she's welcome to send it to any other club. I've sent it out to my region, and it gives the information that you will need to have for the pre-endorsement conference. So Cody, you have my permission to send it out to as many people as you need to.
Thank you. And again, once we get the info on the roster template and stuff, we'll send that out as well. I just want to, I think, Deborah, actually, I don't think gender is on the voter reg form. There's an optional Mr., Miss, that sort of thing, but a lot of people don't do that. So they kind of guess in like Vote Builder and PDI. I would just ask your members probably, you know, you generally, at least for like with my clubs, we also ask people like on the membership form now, like what are your pronouns and stuff like that. It's better than to assume folks' gender.
Right. And I'm not sure how they're going to do it either. They're going to do it the way the CDP's been doing it by self-identified or whatever, but we still don't know that.
Yeah, and then Georgine, you have a question?
And this is really directed at Deb, for Deborah. You know, if you have it in your PowerPoint, disregard my question. Is this going to be sent electronically first to you once we make these additions, or how's this process? How are
You're talking about the form, yes. All clubs will be required to send their pre-endorsement conference roster to regional directors and to their counties. So, so if some of you that might live in two, I believe Naroma, she has, I think, 2 regional directors, so she will need to send it to both of us. But yes, that's how we will receive them, is through you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just a reminder for folks, Deborah is the Region 18, which is basically kind of mostly North County, San Diego. And if you're more mid-central county, that's Michelle Krug, who I don't think is on right now. And then there's like maybe a couple that are in Region 19 if you're out in like Northeast. So we can delineate those assembly districts for you. Yeah, okay, thanks, Deborah, really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, and then we have Dina from the Go team. If I can, you there?
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
So a couple of things that as the Go team board we've been working on in terms of gearing up for both organizing for the anti-recall election coming up, as well as the 2022 election cycle. Each club is supposed to have a liaison between its membership and the Go team for activism contact. It would be great if all of you as the club presidents could ensure that you have such a liaison specified and make sure that the county has that contact information for that individual. This will make it easier for us to work with all of our clubs and the activists who are the natural resources that we could use to ensure that Democratic candidates, ballot measures, and local initiatives get passed. This is going to be an intermediary who will facilitate the interface between your organization and kind of the county-wide umbrella of organizing, so that we can continue to have an impact on civic governance and to further implement our shared values in terms of policy and what have you. Next, it's likely that you'll be contacted about the possibility of doing a Go team training in your club's March 2022 meeting, your monthly meeting. That would make it possible for other individuals in the community to attend your club meeting to be trained by the Go team, and for your club members to be trained by the Go team. And we would like to ask all of you to seriously consider doing this. We found it to be very successful where it's been done before. It makes it much easier for your members and local folks to participate in such a short training with us coming to you in terms of the presentation, instead of having folks try to schedule themselves throughout the county. Next, it's also a great opportunity for some other people in your area to meet your club and join your club. And that's what happened with my local club in Pacific Beach. Some of the folks who had attended the training subsequently became members of our club. And then finally, in terms of the liaison who we would like you to ensure that you have for your club, we'd also like to encourage you to consider making that individual a non-voting member of your executive board. If you want to make it a voting position, you may, but the advantage to that is that the individual who is your liaison will have up-to-date information on what's going on with your club and be able to pass on important information. We're trying to structure this a little bit more, make it a little bit more organized countywide, because while certain areas of our county have good Go Team representation and lots of volunteers to help us get out the vote, there are some other areas that have significant deficits, and we need to increase representation of different ethnic groups, ages, and regions of our county, because we have a lack in certain areas. So please, if you would, put together a list of who will be your liaison for your club, and consider making that individual a non-voting member of your executive board. And finally, kind of keep it in mind that you might be contacted about the possibility of an in-house Go Team training at your March 2022 meeting. And that's it. Any questions?
Dina, may I?
Yes.
It's Wayne.
Hi, Wayne.
Is the county party going to provide the training for the various March 22nd
Yes.
meetings? Okay.
Yes.
And who is handling this program for the county? Is it you?
Who is handling which aspect of it?
Who is organizing this new program to involve clubs in Go Team training?
That is, I'm part of the working group working on this, along with Sonara. Sonara Vasquez Kidwell is also coordinating all of this with me, and we have a working group kind of team or committee. I don't know. It's much more informal than that. Who have volunteered to help. Groups. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Sure. Other questions?
Yes, Dina.
Yes.
Exactly who do we send this information about our liaison to? To you, to Sonara, to who?
I think you need to provide it to the county party staff.
Okay.
Please send it to Ryan Hurd, and then to Andrea. Okay. Send it to Andrea, and that way they'll put it together and update the records that they have, so that we'll all have much more organized information going forward.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for your time, and I'm really glad to see all of you here today. Thanks much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
I have my hand up. But
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I can't see the hands from where I am. Go ahead.
So when we do our recharter application every year, we have to state on there who our Go Team liaison is. So are you saying that we need to change our recharter?
No.
In order to
no.
Well,
no, the issue is that a lot of the clubs don't list that. Part of the problem is that a lot of the clubs aren't listing anyone. So yes, please reiterate it if you've already identified a particular individual. Otherwise, please identify someone who will be the liaison.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, Dina.
Thank you, Cody.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and, all right, just quick reminder, this is our committee. So if you're a geographic club, you know who your rep is, and we also have a couple of at-large reps. And if you aren't sure who your point person is from our committee for your club, let me know and we will clarify that for you. And now I want to call up our guest speaker. Let's see if I can find you, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen if I can figure out how to do that. There we go. Stop share. Okay. Dima. All right. Thank you so much, Dima, for being here today to do this presentation. We really appreciate it. And this is definitely an important topic for us.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be with you today. I used to live in San Diego for over 9 years, finished my bachelor's from San Diego State and my master's from the University of San Diego. So I feel like I am among my people. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But before we do that, I'm going to spend some time with you talking about our implicit bias. It's also called unconscious bias and microaggressions. It's so important for us to understand the foundation of what this means before we even talk about DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So let's go ahead and start. And I emailed a handout. Did you get the handout?
I sent it this like right before the meeting started. I'm not sure who all was able to see it though.
Okay, so maybe you can complete it afterwards. Okay, so let's go ahead and officially start. How many of you heard about the 7-second rule? And before we actually officially start, I encourage you everybody to put yourself on camera, engage with me. It would be so boring for me to just talk to a group of names. I want to see your face. Even if your hair and makeup is not perfect for the women, it's great. For the men, you're looking good. I just want everybody to be on camera. Okay, so when we talk about the 7-second rule for the first impression, what comes to your mind? I gave you a hint, first impression. Yes, go ahead. I see a hand with all the funny dogs. Yeah, I agree with the dog, how the dog should wear the mask. Humans too. Please go.
Hi, sorry about that. So this is intro. Yeah, so the 7-second rule, I think, is when you see someone in that initial 7 seconds where you make assumptions based off your predisposed idea of what that person is. You know, if you see someone in a ball cap, you think X, Y, or Z, or if you see a man, you see X, Y, or Z, or a woman. So that's kind of, and then your unconscious bias start to kick in. So that's my quick take on it.
Yes, I think this is what you said is absolutely right. The 7-second rule, whenever we meet somebody, we build a quick first impression about them. If we can trust them, we automatically assume what's their social habits, what their race, ethnicity, their age, their intelligence. So as we've been talking, it's been over 7 seconds. So you already have an idea in your head about me. You're questioning without even realizing, can I trust her? Does she even know what she's talking about? And the answer is yes to both. You can trust me and I know what I'm talking about. So hopefully you're going to gain a lot in the next hour. So now I'm going to give you person 1 and person 2 and different qualities about these people. And I want you to tell me what was your first impression related to person 1 and person 2. So person 1 earns $30,000 annually and supports a family of 3, has credit card debt, married through traditional family introduction, living with death threat for their life, rents an apartment in a low-income neighborhood. And then person 2 has a graduate degree, paid $60,000 in student loans, multilingual, climbed Mount Fuji in Japan, worked on a project with the United Nations. Okay. So without even analyzing it, what was your first impression about person 1 and what's your first impression, first thing you thought about related to person 2?
This is Rob, as you read through the list, each one triggers a certain set of factors. And because most of that's unconscious, I try to consciously ask myself what I'm thinking about with each one, just to dive into the exercise. But none of them really, 30K talked about, you looked at a whole demographic of people, right? It was kind of broad because there's a whole bunch of people only making that. And then credit card debt, whole bunch of people. But number 3, married through traditional family introduction, then it began to narrow. And so I
You're
thought about
analyzing too much. You're analyzing it. I'm so grateful you're sharing. I'm talking about first impression. Just the fact there's a lot of people that make 30,000 or have credit card that our brain usually has first quick impression and judgment related to these people. So again, I'm so thankful you're sharing, but first impression. What is the first story you build in your mind about person one and person two? So go ahead, without analyzing it.
Hotel worker.
Okay. You see, now we're talking. Good. Okay.
Person two is more responsible.
Okay. Thank you. That's so much better. Okay.
That person two has had more personal success.
Okay.
Person one must be stressed out.
Tough life, yeah.
Person one is an immigrant or a, yeah.
Okay.
I read that person two has a lot of.
Person two was being positioned as being someone who's Euro, white, and white, privileged, wealthy. I mean, Mount Fuji.
Yeah.
And, you know, able to pay off their loans and get multiple languages, have a graduate degree. And then the other person seemed to be positioned as, oh, this is someone of color, you know, living in a bad neighborhood and just getting by.
Yes. Interesting. Yeah. Go ahead. I see more hands. Go.
Yeah, I'm just going to go. Okay.
Person two was born on third base and thought they hit a triple.
Yeah, I felt person two has had all the advantages, is making enough money to pay for their student loan, not working not working harder than person one. But person one isn't making enough money to pay, you know, adequately all of her expenses or his expenses.
Okay. Okay, good. So you're already, some of you are trying not to put a gender, but imagine what came to your mind related to the gender, to the race, the age. Some of you talked about immigrant. So it's interesting how just little information I gave you, all of us, we built a story in our head. And this is without analyzing it, that is our biases, our unconscious biases that we're going to talk about. So we have two kinds of biases. There are some that we know about. Some people say, I know I am racist, which is horrible for them to say, but they know it. That's who they are. They should not be proud, but that's who they are. The challenge is all of us, even though we're great people, the rest, we still have biases, and it affects how we're engaging with others. They're called unconscious biases or implicit biases, and they are affecting who we like, who we want to be in our circle, who we want to run away from. So these biases, they are judgment about other people and situations, and they're based on related to what we were told as we were growing up about other groups of people, our own experiences, what the media tells us, not just the actual media, it's also social media. Imagine all the information we're absorbing all the time. And it is shortcuts in our brain, as if we go to the world every day making quick decisions about what is safe, what is not, who we like, who we don't. And most of the time, we don't even realize it. So how many of you, when you sometimes in your life, you got in the car, you were driving to the grocery store from your home, you got in the car, you had so much on your mind, you started the car, and then suddenly you arrived at the grocery store and you don't even remember how you got there? Raise your hand. I want to see how many of you experienced that. Absolutely. That is our brain, our unconscious brain processing all of these information that we're not even aware, and the same thing as we're engaging with others. So I want you to reflect. You don't need to answer, but reflect, because we're going to go into a lot of information related to this. Why do people tend to seek friends that are similar to them? Why I am so excited to present to you today for the fact that I'm a Democrat, and also lived in San Diego? Why did I feel like you're my people? And I would have felt different if I was presenting to another group that don't share similar characteristics. How does unconscious bias apply to our daily life? How does it affect our work? How does it affect our clubs and how we are engaging with our members? What are some effective ways to address biases in ourselves and others? So it's not a matter of just putting all the problems out there. We need to learn how to address them. And we're going to talk about all of this. So science finds that our brain receives 11 million bits of information every second. I don't know how they calculated that, but that's what they say. Our brain receives all of this information that is processing it, but we only can consciously process 40. So imagine how much other things are going on in our brain that we're not even aware of with all this information that's coming our way. That's why we're going to talk about our fast brain and our slow brain. Without going into all scientific technical words that will confuse you and already confuse me, we'll simplify it. Our fast brain and our slow brain. Our fast brain is the one that processes the 11 million bits of information every second. It's a danger detector. It's trying to protect us from any danger, from somebody trying to hurt us, from a lion coming to attack us. We're not going to stop and think, should I run or should I just stand here and face the lion? We don't. We just need to run away. But this is what's determining what is safe or not. The problem is, even though it helps keep us safe, it's also a bias trap. That's when we're making decisions and we're not realizing, and most of the time, they are based on wrong information that was fed to us all of our life. And because we live in such a fast pace, there's just so much stuff going on in our world. Most of the time, we may not even think about, why do I like this person and not this other one? Why did I decided to hire this person and not the other? Why do I connect better with this member and not this other one? But now we have the slow brain. This is the more mature part of our brain. This is the one that analyzes and thinks. So imagine the first one is more like the primitive one. Now this is more evolved one. That's the one where we question and we analyze, and we're just not processing information and treating others blindly. We are aware why we are interacting with others. So now in the chat, we have 2 truths and a lie. I want you to go ahead in the chat and tell me which one is the lie. Number 1, 2, or 3. Three. Okay. Very good. Biases, it's very true. They impact our behavior and choices without even us realizing. We don't have these biases because we're bad people. We have them because we're people, we're human. That's part of how our brain works. And definitely we cannot eliminate it. This is a part of our journey for the rest of our lives, to be aware of our biases and to do something about them. So let's do another one since these are fun. So which one you think? 1, 2, or 3? Do you think I'll give you 2 questions with 3 the same as the wrong answer? The wrong one is 2. So unconscious biases, they're activated. I need to move the chat box outside of our control and without our consent. Absolutely. That's why they're called unconscious. Our brain is doing all of this work. They are aligned with our beliefs. No, we still can have biases related to people and groups of individuals without even us realizing it. And I'm going to share it with you. Your belief that maybe you want to be inclusive and kind and loving, but you still have biases related to race or gender without you even knowing it. Detecting bias is tricky because we confuse our initial reaction with insight. And that's what happens where we would say, I have a gut feeling about this person, or my intuition is just not comfortable with this individual. Usually that is some kind of bias that we're not even aware of. So now imagine a person in a leadership role. What first thing that came to your mind about the physical characteristics related to this person? So we're talking about the physical characteristics. So unmute yourself or put it in the chat. What comes to your mind related to the physical characteristics of a person in a leadership role? Okay, Susan, male? Female, okay, white person. White, male, tall, yeah, good, tall, male, older. Yes, so I'm glad you said all of this. So Steve, decisive is not a physical characteristic. We're looking at the physical. Lacking disabilities, that is true. Yeah, usually that's what comes to our mind because that's what the media has been feeding us. When we look at the organizations, usually that's who's leading these organizations. So there was a survey that was done on Fortune 500 CEOs. And they looked at their height and they found that on average, they're 6 feet tall, which is approximately 2.5 inches taller than the average American man. Do you think that when they had the job description for these CEOs, they said, this is the qualification, here's the education, and we're looking for someone who is 6 feet and taller? And here, of course, they say American man because most of them are men. But do you think that was one of the criteria for what they were looking for? Or do you think it is unconscious bias that we associate tall men with leadership and height is associated with authority and control and somebody that we can follow? What do you think? Barrett, most of the leadership people in my life growing up have been and are female. So maybe that's why the first thing that came to your mind is that it's a woman. Yeah. So do you think it was one of the criteria, the height? Absolutely not, but we have biases that we're not even aware of. Do you think there's a correlation between a woman's weight and her ability to lead? Great answers. Yes, so our slow brain is telling us, no, there's no correlation, but our fast brain says something else. So there were 500 hiring professionals that were shown women with different body weight. And only 18% of them selected the heaviest looking women that they have leadership potential. So even when you think about women in leadership, how do they tend to look like? They tend to be a little taller, very, very thin. So it's interesting how all of these biases, we're not even aware of them. So Kate, based on my experience, that totally tracks. So I don't know what that means. Like, what do you mean that totally tracks?
As a plus size woman, I am often overlooked for leadership positions.
Is it? Yeah, yeah. I have a friend with the same experience. She's extremely intelligent, and she realizes that when she is working virtually, people tend to listen more to her compared to when she is in person in the conference room. Otherwise, like when she's in the conference room, she's being ignored. But when she's speaking virtually and they're not seeing her, somehow they listen more to her. Isn't that sad?
I've had that exact experience.
Yeah, that's why we talk about this. That's why we need to be aware of it in order to create an inclusive culture where we are respecting people. Most of the time, we may not be aware that we're doing these things, but we are. And that's why the more we talk about it, the more it's bringing it to the surface and opening our eyes. So I see one hand.
So I thought it was interesting that you asked us to show our faces at the beginning of your presentation, because I'm very averse to showing my face on meetings because of my job. I happen to be a senior software engineer, but I am female and I look much younger than I am. I've been doing it 20 years, but it doesn't look like I've been doing it 20 years. And I'm really, really good at my job, but I've also noticed that when I'm virtual and the camera is off, people respect me a lot more, and they're much quicker to trust me than they would be if they were looking at me and seeing my face in person.
Yeah. Well, I still would like to see your face, but you know, it's another thing. Like, oh, here you are. Look how pretty. I'm glad that you and you're driving too. Don't drive and watch this. Okay.
My husband is driving.
Okay, good. So I totally understand. You're trying to avoid the bias, but also I recognize a lot of individuals, you become invisible. When you are not, people don't see you, it's more difficult for them to trust you. And I'm going to mention women in general. I'm sure it applies to men. We need more women to be visible. We need to be able to engage with women and not have you hidden behind a screen. Okay, racial bias. So there's a lot of research about racial bias, and they find that the individual with lighter skin color is more likely to be hired, promoted, mentored, become a CEO, and more likely to make money. That individual is more likely to be befriended and asked to go out with their colleagues. These things happen. We may feel that we're so kind and inclusive, but there's still biases in our head that stop us from truly seeing and engaging with the people around us. And I see your hand again. You have another comment? Okay, maybe she forgot to take her hand. Wayne, you have a comment?
Yes, I recall reading some research done on hiring people based on resumes submitted without pictures. And this was a research comparing white hiring to African-American or Black hiring. And if the person had a name that sounded Anglo, regardless of the race, they tended to be hired more frequently than if they had a name that sounded Latinx or African American. And it raises the question in my mind as to when we actually see a person, we're triggering those unconscious biases much more than if we're listening to the person's voice. I wonder if it's accurate that people are more trustful of someone they can see as opposed to listening to what they say. Can you comment on that?
So you touched into a lot of great points. I agree with you about the research related to the resumes, and where individuals with a white sounding name, they tend to be they tend to get more invited to a first interview compared to somebody else. So if I say Jose versus Joe or Muhammad versus Mike, it's, even though our slow brain is saying to us right now, it shouldn't matter. We care about the qualifications. The reality is not. And I agree about, we tend to trust people when we see them. So just the voice is not enough. That's part of being a human. You would trust me more if I was even there in person with you. Imagine if I give the presentation and I have my screen with just my name. It's going to be difficult for you to connect with me. It's part of being a human. We need to be able to see each other. We need to be able to read the body language of others. Does this answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I see. Oh, I see more hands. Great. Okay, go ahead, please.
Well, yeah, can I make this is actually kind of a confession. I once had a temp job, long-term temp, where I was responsible for receiving resumes of people for a particular position. And the person that wanted them, I noticed that she was selecting those that did not have African-American sounding names or Latino names. Okay. So then she got too busy and she said, well, what can you just pick the, and begin forwarding me batches of X amount of number of people. So to be quite honest, I then went and specifically only sent African-American and Latino resumes to her so that they would get an interview, because I realized that was what was happening.
Yeah.
So that's my confession. So
yeah, well, we need to give opportunities to everybody. But whoever thinks that you only get hired and promoted based on your skills and experience, that person is kidding. They're kidding themselves, because there's a major other factor that goes into play as well. Okay, more hands. Please go ahead.
Yeah,
I had read an article, this was many years ago, Dima, how, for women, that weight was even more considerable sometimes than their ethnicity or their race, that having that excess weight or anything really prevented them to excel and to move on in the corporate world. And it was a study many years ago on corporations and what they look for. And that was one that the single most was for women was their weight.
And it still applies, even though it was, you said it's like an article from a while back, it still applies. Okay.
Oh, I guess I'll go next.
Yes.
So one thing that's really interesting when we're talking about what's in a name, and for a lot of Asian Americans like myself, like Chiwu and a couple of others, people who look at an Asian American name like Indranil Banerjee or Chiwu, a lot of us in the API community, we've been actually told that we should change our names to kind of fit in or to kind of sound right, especially for professional reasons. So I've been told, oh, why don't you go by Neil Banerjee? To which, I don't respond well, but, there's things like that. And I think that you're spot on in this idea of what sounds like a name. And I know it should be said that, a lot of Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders, we actually change our names, or have an American Anglo sounding name that we use in public, and then a real name that we use in private with our families and friends.
Yeah, it's called whitewashing.
Mm-hmm.
We have to wash our identity to just fit in and to stop others from discriminating against us without us really realizing. Yeah. Okay, so Ruby, let's take you and then we'll move on.
Yeah. For me, you can see my last name is Baker. So my name was Zamora, and it was kind of tough for me when I got married. I did not change my name for 2 years, but my husband was like, oh, I'd like you to have my last name. So I wish I would have either hyphenated it, or what I do now is I use Zamora as the middle name. So I did it a little bit different. So even at work, changing my last name, I have to go in through my original name. And then once I'm in there, I can use the other name. So, and it's so unfair because it's such a challenge, anything with your own name. And it's interesting for me. It's just marrying someone into generational wealth has also been an eye opener and an advantage. And the whole lighter skin, it's always been an advantage. It's just amazing. I am I could lose some weight, but at the same time, I've been lucky that hasn't been as tough for me, but definitely that last name is an advantage so much that I feel like I should change it back. So
tricky. We have to do these things. That's why when we talk about attracting more members and having them stay and making sure that they're comfortable. We need to be aware of all of this. And I'm gonna say it that, like, I work with organizations across the US and globally. And when I talk about the US, we're gonna talk about the new generation, the millennials and Gen Z. This is anybody who's younger than 38. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is so important to them. They will not be part of an organization, whether it's nonprofit, whether it is whether it is their employer, if their employer does not create an inclusive work culture. And I know that they look at the Democratic Party and they see that Democrats tend to be so much more inclusive. So in order to grow the party, in order to attract all of this, the new generation that is kind and want all of these things, we need to demonstrate it. Demonstrate it in the leadership of every club, into how you're engaging with the members, how you're engaging with the community. It needs, diversity and inclusion needs to be a big part. That's why we're talking about this. And that's when we talk about what differentiates us from the Republican Party. This is one of the things that does. Okay, so now let me tell you a quick story. And I know we're tight on time. I wish I have like a half day with you, so much to share. So in my situation, I mentioned I graduated from USD, and then I got to live and travel around the world, which has been wonderful. Now I live in Louisiana. USD reached out to me a couple of years ago and asked me to give a commencement address. I was so excited. I flew from New Orleans to San Diego. I was given very clear instructions that I have to to be there at the commencement ceremony an hour early. I was going to meet the dean. The dean was going to introduce me to Provost Baker. So I was there even earlier than an hour, so happy. I met with the dean. We were in this huge space that holds over 5,000 people. And the dean said, come on, let me introduce you to Provost Baker. We got on the stage. There were two people. There were a Black woman and a white man. I went to and both of them were wearing the PhD cap and gown. I went to the white man and I wanted to shake his arm. And I said, hello, Provost Baker, I am Dima. And all of them paused and they said, oh no, she is Provost Baker, not him. Isn't it interesting? I'm the one who talks about biases every day. I'm the one, I quit my job to focus on diversity and culture and advancement of women. And I still, when I heard Provost Baker, the first image that came to my mind was not a Black woman. So imagine how much we do these things all the time. And again, we do them not because we're bad, we do them because we're people. And that's why we need to have this conversation. There are over 180 biases that we all live with. And whether we want to admit it or not, but we have them. And I want to focus on what I call the 3 C's. So the 3 C's are curiosity. We need to be able to be curious about ourselves, our behavior, how we engage with others, curious about other people, their history, their challenges, all of this. And then courage, because this talk is going to require a change in behavior. And a lot of people are not comfortable with change. And it's going to require for us to be allies and to speak for other people that were taught throughout their lives to stay quiet and not to express the discrimination that they have been facing. So when we see something, we need to do something. And commitment, it's not just a one-time thing where just today, we're going to feel so happy and inclusive. It's for the rest of our lives. This is going to require work and it's going to require digging in. And sometimes we may discover not very good things about ourselves and how we engage with others, but it's okay. It's about opening our eyes. So the good news, our brain is adaptable, and let's talk about some of our biases. The first one is affinity bias. Affinity bias is where we tend to like people that are similar to us. So that's why I was so excited to present to you, because there's a lot of common things between you and I. We tend to like to be friends with these people. We like to hire them, promote them. We somehow trust individuals that are more like us. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip this exercise, but I want to encourage you to do it. It's in your handout. I want you to put the list of names of 7 to 10 people that you trust the most that are not family members. And then I want you to put a check mark next to their age group. if they're compared to you, like a check mark is for anyone who's in a similar age group as you, similar race, similar educational level, similar political views, religious beliefs, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic status. Every time I do this, the majority of the attendees, they discover for the first time that the closest people to them that are not family members are very, very similar to them, because it's easier for us to bring to our circle individuals that are the same. And most of the time we do it without us realizing it. And that is affinity bias. So we need to be very, very careful about that. And that's where the circle of trust, where some people with this one, the circle of trust is the dog and everybody else is so far away. Confirmation bias, where we're looking for information that supports our beliefs. And we see this a lot in the election season, where individuals, the candidate saying something or not saying something, and people are just catching the information that supports what they believe, and they forget everything else that the individual is saying. So imagine this, like here, our objective facts, like everything that is objective out there, what confirms our beliefs, and this is what we stick with. We're not looking at all the other facts. We're just looking at the ones that support what we believe in. So this one is funny. She's asking, how do you know if a news story is true? And he responds, if I agree with it. How many of you do that? I do that, and I did that a lot during the elections. Conformity bias, where we're mainly, we end up doing something that is similar to others. So that's why, like when they do the polling before the elections, they're not just doing it to tell us who's doing better than the other. People tend to look at these numbers and say, oh, more people are voting for that candidate. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I need to go vote for that candidate. It's a group thing where we're challenged, we're not bringing new ideas. Maybe we're not comfortable speaking up. Maybe we doubt ourselves and assume that the group that has a bigger number, they tend to know more than us. And guilty by association. So if I say Middle Eastern, there's certain thing that comes to our mind. So we're grouping a person who's Middle Eastern with the entire Middle Eastern community. Many times, I'm originally Middle Eastern, and many times people would say, oh, you don't look like a terrorist, or you don't act like a terrorist. I am not. But it's interesting how they associate me, the fact I'm Middle Eastern, with a terrorist group. Yeah, don't worry, I'm not. And but when I say Asian, when I say queer, when I say like all of these things, we're associating individuals, and that goes to Wayne's point earlier. It's the name bias, where many individuals, they have to change their name just to be whitewashed. They end up taking information from their resume or from their own identity. They start changing who they are just to be accepted. And then the halo horn effect. Halo, like, and this happened with Trump, where people would say, and he would say, whatever he does, even if he kills somebody, his followers will continue to follow him, as if he has a halo on top of his head. So they're not going to see his behavior. They're going to only see what he is. They're going to, again, he has a halo. And anything else regarding the other candidates, as if there is a horn on top of these people's heads. Whatever that person does is always going to be seen as the wrong person. But also we see it too, like in my situation, that's going to be that's going to be Trump in a way. Whatever he does, I'm not going to see his full picture. But that's something we need to be aware of truly questioning our biases related to others, because there's nobody fully perfect, but there's nobody totally horrible either. Okay, affinity bias. I mean, with these are some of the biases we talked about. The affinity bias, we tend to like people like us. Confirmation, conformity, guilty by association, halo and horn effect, and name bias. So do you see, as I'm talking right now, how these biases that we may not even be aware that the brain is processing them, how they're affecting our engagement with others. Do you see that? Do you see how they stop us from bringing more people into the chapters? Do you see how sometimes without you realizing, you may make people uncomfortable as, again, not because you have bad intentions, it's just because we all do these things. Okay. Now let's talk about microaggressions. Microaggressions are insults that minorities experience all the time, but the problem is the person who's doing them is not intentionally doing them. They're not aware that they're even hurting the other people by saying these statements. That's why we need to be aware of it. But the problem is they typically go unreported and unnoticed, because if a person says, I feel discriminated against because I'm being told this thing, told that I'm a woman and I should, why am I not married? Why don't I have children? Like these are small microaggressions. Many other people would be like, oh, you're too sensitive. You shouldn't feel so bad. Or it's just a joke. Why are you too serious? And that is a big problem, especially when it happens. So here are some of the microaggressions that many of us may have heard or may have said without us realizing. So why do you sound so white? Where we say that to an individual who is Black. What do your people think about that? Or you're really pretty for someone so dark. So people are being told these things, and there are different microaggressions where alien, like here, I'm gonna give you some examples. Alien in one's own land. My brother is married to a woman who's originally, her ancestors are from China, but she was born and raised in Canada. And now whenever she talks, people would say, wow, you speak good English. Or they try to speak slower for her. But she was born and raised in Canada. She's as Canadian as all of them. So that's microaggression. Many people say, I'm colorblind. I don't see race. And this is so horrible. If you say it, stop saying it. How can we not see race? Of course we see race. We need to see it, and we need to appreciate it and love people, regardless of their background, gender, ethnicity, race, all of this. We need to see it. We cannot say we don't. The myth of meritocracy, where we say, oh, everybody in our organization is hired and promoted based on their effort. That's a lie. Of course, there's biases that play that we don't even realize them. Sexist language, where we would say to somebody, oh, you don't look transgender, or, oh, my cousin is like you. Or traditional roles, where we would look at a woman and say, oh, are you the secretary? But she would be the boss. Or can you get me coffee? Or we would say, you're 31 and you're still not married. And then denial of bias. And this is the one that makes me so mad, where people do it and they're like, oh, that was not bias. It was not intentional. You're being sensitive. It's not. We need to be aware that we're doing these biases. Like one Black woman was telling me, every time she goes to the grocery store, she realizes that somebody is walking behind her, as if they're worried that she's a thief because she's Black, and they're watching her. And when she says this to others, they're like, oh no, are you sure? You may be wrong. You may be imagining. We cannot do that. If she is experiencing that, we cannot deny that she is living with that bias. So with that, every single time I am told I don't look like an Arab, by every person, yeah, I feel your pain. Did they tell you don't look like a terrorist? Okay, so with these, oh, go ahead with that. No, we can't hear you well. Well, go ahead and enter it in the chat. It's difficult to hear you. The problem with unconscious biases or the conscious one and the microaggressions, they cause disengagement, they lower performance, they cause mental health. There's a lot of research that shows they look at the brain and they analyze the part of the brain that lights up when a person feels being discriminated against, intentionally or unintentionally. And they find that part of that brain that lights is the same as the individual who went through major trauma, especially when they experience it over and over and over again. So we just need to be aware of that. And induces imposter syndrome. Everybody I come across with already has imposter syndrome. So imagine how much it adds to it more and more. And then it results in feeling excluded and alienated. That's why people start leaving their jobs. But we need to make sure we're aware of this, because for you to grow your clubs, you need to know about these things and you need to be aware of it and communicate it to everybody who's part of your club as well. So now, what can we do about it? Let's go and talk about what we can do about it. We need to realize that we're human and our brains make mistakes. And we need to observe how our assumptions are affecting how they're influencing our behavior. So I'm going to read what we did. Susan, microaggressions cause unbelievable levels of stress, cause self-doubt, and affect self-confidence. Absolutely. And Ruby, I have been told I look Afghani. I had several families from Afghanistan. It was a compliment. Well, that's good. Great. If it's a compliment, I'm good with it. If it's a bad thing, assuming you're okay with it too. So we go back to curiosity, courage, and commitment. So you see now, we need to be curious about our behavior. It requires a lot of self-discovery, a lot of psychology going on. And it requires a lot of courage because we need to change our behavior and focus on shifting from the fast brain into the slow brain. That requires courage and commitment. First one is to become more self-aware, to observe our behavior. Like when I messed up in front of Provost Baker, of course, I felt so horrible and I felt so sad seeing her facial expression, because that was not the first time she experienced that, but that made me become more self-aware. And as a result, I became so much more intentional in every single behavior, single interaction, to question, why am I thinking certain things about certain people that I'm meeting? Reflect by asking yourself which team members you feel more comfortable with and why. And I'm not talking about the ones with good work ethic, and we're talking about in general. Why do certain people you feel less comfortable with? So it's a matter of questioning yourself. I know that this was sent to you in an email, I think to everybody, about the Harvard implicit bias test. And it's so powerful because it's going to allow all of us to go and answer these questions. It's a personality assessment that would help us understand what are our biases related to so many different categories, but it's important. Second, engage your slow brain. So pause and don't believe everything you think. I know in the US, we always say, believe yourself, all of this positive thing. Great. Yeah, we need to support ourselves and believe in ourselves, but watch your brain and watch what your brain is telling you about other people and how your brain is engaging with you. Pause, question, check your assumptions, learn, consider your word choices. And that is where the microaggressions. I hear some people say, oh, now I have to worry about everything I say. I have to worry that I'm going to offend somebody if I say good morning. Yeah, it's okay. Worry, as long as we don't hurt other people. If it's going to take more time from us to be intentional and to be kind, that's good, because the alternative is to continue to hurt others and isolate them. And we don't want that. Be intentionally inclusive. So look at your circle of trust, who's around you, and bring more people that are different than you, people that may challenge your assumptions and make you think in a different way, make you uncomfortable. And that's okay. We need to have uncomfortable conversations and learn and challenge how the stories that we were told early on in our lives. be an advocate. So that's part of being an ally. Speak support, but we cannot be advocates or allies if we don't understand the challenges that other groups are facing. We need to understand what are, for example, now is Pride Month. Happy Pride to everybody. So what are the groups that belong to the LGBTQ plus community experiencing? What is this discrimination against them? What is the history of racism? We need to be aware of these things. We need to research it and talk about it and learn about it. Otherwise, how can we be allies? So now when we go back to this, how would you, did anything change about your assumptions related to person 1 and person 2? I'll take 2 of you just for the sake of time. Okay, go ahead.
So are you asking like what we're going to do now after we?
No, so you question your assumptions. You had assumptions about person 1 and 2. Did they change after we went through all of this presentation?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think you have to, I mean, I was talking to someone earlier, like I've completely will point the finger at myself. I've made assumptions that are based in my own, my own raised misogyny, my own raised internal, like the kind of things that we're taught as we grow up. And yeah, I have to challenge those issues, and I have to challenge that when I look at this, and I'm really glad we are.
Okay, I see one more hand.
Initially, I assumed the person 2 was working, but there's no evidence that they're even working. They paid off their student loans because maybe their grandparents did.
Yeah, thank you. So person 1 and person 2 is me. Isn't that interesting? When you met me, you may never have thought of me being any of this. I got married through traditional family introduction in Jordan in the Middle East. And I already had the green card. We moved to the US. It was very abusive and I had to escape from that marriage. My family disagreed with my decision and resulted in death threats for my life, because in my small community, they believe if a woman does anything that the family disagrees with, they just kill her. The only reason I'm alive is I'm in the US. And I had to take care of my mom and my sister because their life was threatened too. I focused on my education, enrolled for my master's degree. I focused on paying my student loans because everything I was living with at that time was credit card debt, student loans. Of course, I'm multilingual, got to work with IBM. They moved me on an international assignment in Japan, got to do a team building activity, climb Mount Fuji, and worked on women advancement initiatives as part of IBM with the United Nations. Isn't it interesting how we build judgment about the stories related to people? And we have no clue that every single one of us, we have a story. Every single one of us, we have pain, we have dreams, aspirations, insecurities. And I want to challenge you every time you're meeting somebody new to question yourself, because there is no way we're going to be able to truly know them with what's going on just externally. There's just so much to all of us that they don't even meet the eye. So I want to give opportunity for maybe like 1 or 2 of you to share your thoughts, and then we'll move to the other section, which is the diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I didn't really make assumptions. I said, when I spoke, I said the persons were being positioned as, because I know the assumptions that are being made. And like I put in the chat, I'm a Black woman, but person 2 is very much me, except for I didn't have that many student loans.
Yeah.
And haven't climbed Mount Fuji, but I've climbed another mountain, but similar. I mean, so you can't make assumptions because you don't know. But I will say, I do know I had an experience of someone white skinned questioning me as to how I was able to afford to travel to Europe and spend the summer in Europe. They said, surely I must have a white relative because that would have somehow magically enabled me to have the means to travel to Europe.
And that hurts. That's why we need to be intentional in not hurting others and not having these biases of what our fast brain is telling us and what the stories that we were growing up with, what the media is telling us. We need to question everything. So whenever we're meeting somebody, our first impression, we need to observe, what is my first reaction when I meet someone? What stories and assumptions am I telling myself? Do my actions and assumptions break or preserve an existing cultural bias? And am I making generalizations? So I'm hoping this presentation is going to encourage you to do that and encourage you to pass this information to your club as well. So now let's get to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, we have a lot of work to do in order to become a more inclusive society. Absolutely. That's why we get to talk about it. So diversity, many people, when they think of the D, the diversity, is they're thinking about race and gender. But we're all diverse. We're all so different. So there's primary ones, which is they compare it to the iceberg. So anything above the water in the iceberg, people think that's what makes us different. But there's so much what's under the water that we don't see related to our values, views, all of this. So again, similarities and differences that make us who we are, and their characteristics that some are visible, others are not. Equity. So equity is fair treatment and fairness of access. Many people think they confuse equity with equality. Equality is giving the same lenses to a group of people and expecting them all to see. Are they going to see? No, because each one of us, we have a different degree for what we need, whether it is lens or maybe we don't even need glasses. But if we're forcing everybody to have, because it's equality, right? Everybody gets the same training. Everybody goes through the same program. Everybody gets the same information. That is not enough. What we need is equity. Equity is like customizing the glasses to every person based on what they need, with a focus on the end result. We want the end result for everybody to see, or we want the end result for everybody to be successful, or everybody be informed. How can we adapt our style to focus on what they need to achieve that goal, instead of just giving equality, and then it's just not going to work? And inclusion. So diversity, many organizations, they just want to bring people from different colors and genders and put them around the table, and they think they achieved the goal. Of course, we cannot achieve inclusion if we don't have diversity. But also, just having people around the table, that doesn't mean you're creating a healthy work culture where people feel a sense of belonging, that feel safe. We need to bring them all together. It's building a culture of belonging by actively inviting the contribution of everybody. And that is when most of the time our biases stand in the way. That's why we get to talk about the biases early on, to understand them and ensure that the biases are not going to allow us to stop others from being themselves, from speaking up, from getting opportunities. So whenever I look at organizations, I group them into 5. The first one are the ones that are reactive. They most likely, they don't believe in DEI. It's a waste of time. They just reactive. If they have an issue that leaks into the media, they may think they bring somebody like me for an hour to give a training, and they just move on with their lives. The second one is DEI is nice to have, but it's a luxury we cannot afford. It's at the bottom of the list, not even the priority list. It's like the non-priority list is at the bottom of it. After the murder of George Floyd, a lot of organizations became like 3. They're questioning themselves. They're starting to realize the value. They just don't know what to do. And then they're dedicated to implementing and investing in DEI. That's number 4. These are the ones that realize that it is so important. They ensure that they have a strategy, they have initiatives, they have a dialogue, they're encouraging it. If anybody causes discrimination, they address it. And then number 5, it is essential for everything they do. It is part of everything, every interaction. Of course, there's not a lot of 5s, but as long as we go to that direction. So we're going to do a quick poll, and I want to ask you all, where do you rank your chapter? So let's put the poll on.
Dima, so I wasn't able to create a poll for this because Zoom only does multiple choice and we have like 50 clubs. So
Oh, it was supposed to be for everybody. I wish you asked me. That's okay. Go in the
well, sorry, I didn't see the email you sent this morning until right before the meeting, so there wasn't really time to look at other options. But maybe we can have people put ideas in the chat for
yes, in the chat. Yeah, in the chat, go ahead and put your number 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5.
Oh, I see. Now I understand what you were suggesting about the poll, but I didn't realize it was about these 5 things. Otherwise, I probably could have done that. So sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay, so I see a lot of 3s, some 4s. Kate 4 striving to 5. That is so great. But I want you to question yourself. Are you truly a 4, or does it sound good to be a 4? So that maybe there's a bias where we want to be better than where we are. There's a lot of advantages to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Here, I'm talking about business advantages. I want you to think about your club and how can you grow your club by being more inclusive and making it public, talking about it on your social media, on your website, ensuring that it's part of who you are. That's the only way you're going to be able to attract specifically the millennials that are Gen Y and Gen Z. Anyone who is younger than 38, right now they're 52% of the population, and diversity, equity, and inclusion is so important to them. They're leaving companies if they don't feel included. So in order to attract them, this is going to be so major, so very much important. So I want you to remember that diversity is all of us. We are all diverse in some way. And the most important thing is to keep thinking about how we can be intentional in our actions. So we have like 1 minute for your takeaways. Go ahead in the chat, enter your takeaways, or unmute yourself and tell us. I covered with you a presentation that I give in 4 hours, in 1 hour. And I wish I had more time to hear your experiences. And I'm like, now I need to like catch my breath. Like, come on. So yeah, go in the chat or unmute yourself and tell us what are some of your takeaways. Yes.
So this is Chiu. Lesson learned for me, don't judge people so quickly. Take time, learn, get to know the people, and try to make sure you overcome any unconscious bias, and then we can work better with others and have more inclusive and diverse club and society.
Thank you. That is so great. Okay, I see more hands.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. I think that one of the first takeaways for me is the fact that in order to become more inclusive, we really have to learn. We have to engage ourselves in this very important learning so we can be aware of what our reactions, implicit or unconsciously, but again, learning about it and being conscious about it.
Yes. And educating others too.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dima, I live in a community that the median age is in the high 50s all around us, which can tell you a lot about the community. But I am, as a club president, I'm mostly concerned about how we attract and recruit more Gen Z and Gen Y people, because I have been reading about their values. I have grandchildren in that category. And I have to tell you, I think the hope of the world right now lies in that generation and its values. But is there some way of having a program where our club members can determine recruitment strategies and what we need to do to be more attractive, to become more attractive for that particular age group?
Yeah. So you need to think about two things. One, what are you doing with the existing members? And then the other one is, what are you doing with potential members? Internally, I want you to think about, what are you communicating with your members about the focus on diversity and creating a healthy work, an inclusive culture for everybody, your value for inclusion. Think about, what are you communicating with them? What kind of dialogues you're creating with them, but also externally, what are you sharing on your social media? Did you post something about Pride Month? Did you post something about Juneteenth, which was just last, I think 2 weeks ago? Did you post related to what is it called, like International Women's Day? So ensure, like, social on your website, do you have a section on your website how your club is focused on inclusion of everybody? It's welcoming everybody regardless of their background, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation. You need to communicate that. When people go to your page on website, they want to see it. When they go to your social media, the more you show this, the more you're going to attract more individuals. I understand your area. You said they're more senior, but I'm sure there's individuals from all ages. The more you talk about this, and trust me with that, the more you're going to attract the younger generations. Because right now, a lot of organizations are losing them just because they're not inclusive. And this is a big problem that the Republican Party are facing. So like how they treat individuals that are Hispanic, how they treat individuals that are Black, how they treat the LGBTQ plus community is just not going to work. So let's do it right. And it's good because it's about being human and appreciating others and their humanity. It's a good thing. So let's speak it up and communicate it and make it so clear that people will start coming to us.
Thank you.
Does this answer your question?
Yes, given me the idea. We've been mission a lot. So I think we need to stay.
He's breaking up on mine.
I think we lost you. Yeah. When you come back, we'll give you a talk. Rob?
Yeah, mine, real quick. First of all, I appreciate what you're doing. And I want us as leaders in the Democratic Party, the one thing I feel like this can help us with, you made the statement several times, and I hope everyone hears it. The millennials, what they're looking for. And it even goes beyond just the millennials, but it goes to the various diverse communities, what they're looking for. I've got several people who would love to be a part of the Democratic clubs, but don't feel welcome. And so not everyone will just jump in like some of us will and deal with the fights and deal with the microaggressions and deal with that, because we know that our democracy is at stake. So I guess my question is, the value proposition, how do we speak to it when we're trying to explain that to folks? Because like right now, we've gotten the information and it's all good, but the question is, like, in order to move from 3 to 4, I feel like understanding the value proposition is critical, but I'm not sure how to effectively articulate that to people who have been centered in a place and are fine where they are. I have 150 members in my club. How much bigger could my club be? Well, based on the demographics, it could probably be a 500 member club, but how do we discuss that value proposition, I guess is my question.
Yeah. Isn't it sad that we have to have a value proposition to tell people to be kind to others? Isn't that sad?
Yes.
So with corporations, there's a lot of information, tons of research, how when we increase inclusion within the organization, it helps with the bottom line. It increases creativity, innovation, all of this. In your situation, I recommend for you to do it for the sake of doing it, because it's the right thing to do. You don't need a value proposition to tell your members and to increase, to grow your club just because of something. Don't you want to do it because it's the right thing to do? Don't you want to do it because the people that you have as part of your club feel safe and comfortable to be there, and they're kind, and they want to attract more individuals that are like them? I'm not going to give you a major value proposition. I'm just going to tell you we all need to do it because it's the right thing to do. Okay, we'll take one last one, and then we'll that would be it. But I'm more than happy to answer any questions you got. You can email me afterwards. Okay. I see. Yes.
Hi, is that me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Since we have all the leaders here, I just wanted to note that sometimes a lot of us who are part of marginalized communities step into these positions. And unfortunately, we still have board members that are part of older positions that still carry bias, and it becomes increasingly hard for us to change the mainframe immediately. So I think it's important for us to remember when we're in these biases that sometimes countering when we're trying to talk to people and tell them what's going on, tell them what will bring people in, such as I see ageism thrown around a lot. And sometimes I feel like that's used as an excuse to use implicit bias against people of color, against women, against people that are part of the LGBTQ community. And I think it's important for us to remember, especially if we're part of not part of a marginalized community, or better, that you listen to us. I mean, I know for me as a president, a lot of the reactions that I get, even from my club members, they watch to see how my other board members who have been there and established already react to me before they react. And that's extremely difficult. And then if I react, or I have to think about my reaction sometimes longer than I should. I have to think, if I raise my voice, am I going to be seen as angry? If I say something a certain way, are they going to say, oh, well, look at the way she's reacting. She's such a bee. God, what good is she? So I think it's important, especially with all the leaders here, that we understand that concept and how some of us really want to make that change, but this is the stuff we're up against.
It's tough. It's tough. Maybe it sounds like your board need to go through unconscious bias training. or conscious bias too. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I feel that a lot of good things are going to happen the more we have individuals that are compassionate and inclusive, advancing in various leadership roles. But right now, I understand there's a lot of resistance that we experience regardless of what job role we have. But we just need to keep talking about it. Good. Well, it was a pleasure spending time with you. Reach out to me. I put my email earlier. I'll put it here again. If you have any questions, I will be in San Diego for the 4th of July weekend. After 4th of July, I'm so excited. So maybe I'll see some of you. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here and doing this presentation for us. I think it was really informative and helpful for our club.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. And anyone, if you, for some reason, are not on the Dem Council of Clubs email list and want a copy of the handouts that were sent out, please email clubs@sddemocrats.org and we can get that sorted out.
And I also included some links, some blogs that I wrote that has more information about our biases and what we need to do about it. If you go to my website, it has a lot of this information. Okay, Goodbye. One last time, goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So, I believe next I have Kelly, who's going to give a quick presentation about the recall. I don't know if you were going to share anything, but I just made you a co-host, Kelly. You need to unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. There's a lot to say about the recall, including the fact that the party is starting about after the 4th of July. The party is going to have lots of ways that you can become involved. But what I want to say today, because I'm going to be very, very brief, if you can believe that of me, is that the facts about the recall are just damn scary. We really have a chance to lose. I don't know how to emphasize that to get around your mindset that believes, no, how could we lose? The majority of people are not in favor of the recall. But of course, it's not what the majority believe, it's the majority of the people who turn out. And I'm going to give you 2 facts and then stop that might shake you up, because it surely shook me up. 1, Californians are divided into 3 groups in about 1/3 of the population in each of the 3 groups. 1/3 believes that we would be worse off if Governor Newsom was recalled. Another 1/3 believe that we would be better off if Governor Newsom was recalled. And the final 1/3, and it's really very close in all of these groups, the final 1/3 thinks there would be no difference. Now think about what this means. People who believe it's no difference are not going to vote. So among the people who are going to vote, we're kind of in a dead heat. Now I'll give you one more fact. The second fact, 75% of Republicans take the recall as high interest, very high interest in the recall. And only 6% of Republicans have a low interest. On the other hand, Democrats, 36% of them take a high interest, but 34% of them take a low interest. Now, if you multiply the numbers, we all know there's more Democrats than Republicans. We're not quite double the number of Democrats versus Republicans, not quite double. But if you take 75% of Republicans, the ones most likely to vote, 75%, that is actually a higher number of voters than the 36% of Democrats who have a high interest, even though there's nearly double the number of Democrats. So the final thing I'd like to say is, please do not let people tell you, oh, there's no way he could win because who's going to vote for him over? Nobody even knows who Faulkner is, la da 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 da. It doesn't matter. If Caitlyn Jenner brings 6% of the voters to the polls to vote in favor of the recall, that's 6% more, even though she may not get the majority. And we could very well see the situation where the person winning wins with only 22%, say, of the people who turn out. So please start discouraging your neighbors and your friends and yourself from assuming that it can't happen, because look at the numbers, it really can happen. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. And then
Could I just add on something to that, Cody?
Yes.
Okay. So what is happening is that the California Democratic Party is taking the lead on the recall, and they're trying to get community hubs all across the state to work with them. So the county party is going to be a hub, and we'll be organizing lots and lots of activities, but they'll all be put on a website that will go out to everybody in the state. In addition to that, if your club wants to do something, there's absolutely nothing to stop that. There's nothing to stop individuals from doing their own thing. They also have community captains, and you can be a community captain and start things. So there's a lot of ways to participate. And as I said, the county party will be doing a lot of things. We'll be organizing phone banks and various other kinds of things that you can get into. But, you know, also consider about your own club trying to do some things regarding the recall. And we'll be hearing a lot more about it. We don't have a date for the recall yet, and we'll be hearing a lot more as time goes by. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Seth. Appreciate it. So next, I'm going to go into just a little brief discussion about moving forward with in-person and hybrid meetings for clubs, and some folks wanted to discuss this. So in-person meetings, some things to consider when we're planning to go back to those. One of those being location. I am gonna just say off the bat, these are all suggestions, and you just want to make sure you're abiding by laws and whatever rules that the businesses you're working with have put in place. We want to emphasize safety. We don't want any breakouts, especially at our Dem Club and party meetings. Some groups are starting to look at going back with some outdoor events at first. I know Dems for Equality is doing a picnic, and some other ones have talked about that. So that might be an easy way to ease folks in who might feel a little more comfortable with that sort of thing. You know, food, that's another big issue for some folks. You know, are you going to do this at a restaurant where they're going to cook the food there? Are you going to have catering brought to an outdoor event, that sort of thing? And of course, safety rules. And I want to be clear, we are allowed to have these rules as clubs. Businesses are allowed to have these rules. It's not a violation of privacy for you to have these rules or to ask for these things. So things to consider, whether you are going to ask folks to provide proof of vaccination. These days, we even have a method to get that online. I don't have the link on me right now, but I know the California Department of Public Health now has a way to get that online. And if folks lost their vaccination card, you can require negative COVID tests, masks, social distancing. Oh, I put that twice. Hand washing, just emphasizing those at your meetings. Of course, there are going to be some people who, for medical reasons, are not able to get vaccinated or haven't been able to get vaccinated yet. For instance, my boyfriend is one of them. He was just finally able to get a vaccination with medical supervision. So we want to be mindful of that and make sure we're accessible to those folks. And part of that is why we get vaccinated in the first place, to create herd immunity to protect folks who aren't able to get vaccinated. So I want to make sure we're keeping that in mind. And again, you know, if the business has determined that it has its own rules for wearing masks or anything like that, you want to make sure you're abiding by that. And then hybrid meetings. So what I'm going to show on the next slide, I don't want people to, you know, freak out about because it's a little bit a lot, but this is what I found as recommendations for having hybrid meetings. A lot of that does require some maybe technical expertise or equipment that not everyone has. So we'll talk about how we can maybe meet that with what we have right now. But so here's some kind of suggestions. So obviously you're going to need, so again, hybrid is where you have some folks in person, some people remote. So of course you're going to need Zoom or some other platform for the online participants. And then you're going to need a camera or maybe a webcam on a computer or other device so that you can record what's happening in person for online participants to view. And if possible, multiple cameras, webcams could be used to share the rest of the meeting space with online participants. I'm sure you all know, usually we have someone speaking at the front of a meeting, but then you might have people speaking as part of discussions throughout the meeting. So that could be something to consider. A microphone. I'm sure you all know, just sitting at your computer, people can't always hear you. So if we're, talking about someone speaking at a meeting who's farther away from the computer or the camera, you're not necessarily going to be able to hear them if you're an online participant trying to view it that way. So you want to consider maybe getting a microphone that would be used by, the speaker at the front of the room, and consider whether that would remain in that speaker's area or if it would be passed along, around tables to members or guests. And again, speaker systems positioned to provide sound and also making sure that you avoid that nasty feedback. A projector, TV, some type of screen where you can show the online participants in the meeting space, maybe at the back of the room or on the side, so that the speaker and guests can, members attending in person can see them. And you're also going to need someone at your meeting to be looking at the Zoom or whatever platform you're using to monitor the chat, make sure that there's no technical issues for those who are attending online. This doesn't mean you need 10 different computers. If you're using the webcam on one for something, you can kind of work around that, maybe use a couple of them, or you can use a tablet or maybe an iPhone for some of that. Not everyone's going to have all of these materials. So, think about with your club what you have access to and what your meeting space that you typically meet at has access to. And, definitely test it ahead of time. Maybe you don't all have a projector or TV to show online participants, but you can at least record the meeting, maybe live stream it, and participants can participate, via comments on Facebook or maybe call in if they need to take a vote or something like that. There are ways to kind of merge those based on what resources you have access to, but you also may want to consider as a club purchasing some of these, pieces of equipment if you don't already have them. Does anyone have any questions about this or anything to add? I don't think I see anything.
Cody, this is Rob.
Yes.
Real quick, I was wondering if we have anyone who could play point on the technical aspects of this, because I even saw this as a great, putting what we need for the hybrid meetings as a way, maybe if we have someone who kind of works in that area, this is an entrepreneurial opportunity, is the way I look at it, till we can get everybody up to speed to be able, maybe you can show up at a meeting and provide what's necessary to do the hybrid meeting.
And Cody, this is Sue Meriden. Can you send this out as a handout if you haven't done so already?
I do that every month. It's going to take some time for me to get up the recording of this meeting, but I do send that out as well as the information. So that will be available. And to Rob, to your point, yeah, I think that would be a great idea, because perhaps someone who has all of these would be willing to rent out their services. I don't want to volunteer anybody on their behalf, but if someone does have this and would like to provide that service, then, we can, send that out. Feel free to put that in the chat or email me, clubs@sddemocrats.org, or if you know someone, that would be great. And then Wayne, I see your hand up. Wayne.
Sorry, Cody. Our club is just at the very early stages of beginning to plan for a return to in-person meetings. Our first step is to run a survey of our members to see how comfortable they may be with returning to in-person, and get a sense of how many would prefer to remain on Zoom as opposed to how many would prefer to come in person. To me, it seems the ideal solution is to go to hybrid meetings. But it is difficult technologically, and also you need a reliable space, a venue in which you hold your meetings, so you can get the setup arranged and know how to do it for each venue, for each meeting.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. And you may also find, unfortunately, this happened with my Young Dems Club, the space we used to meet at, which was a really great outdoor restaurant bar with a TV, has closed permanently. So, that's something to consider too, that folks may need to look around for a new meeting space.
And we're doing that. We were meeting at a school, but the school has had problems, and now they're closing another nearby school, so they're going to use the space we were meeting in. So we're looking for other venues too.
Yeah. But yes, I think that's a great idea to check in with your members as well. Let's see. I'm trying to make sure I see the chat and hands raised at the same time while sharing my screen. So my apologies if I miss anything. Yeah, Kate put in the chat that their club is planning to stay Zoom pretty much forever at this point. So yeah, that's definitely something to consider as well. I will say at this point, I think Zoom is working pretty well for Council of Clubs meetings when we have folks from around the county. That's not to say we'll never go back in person, but I will just let you know for now, including next month, we're going to be still on Zoom.
That's good to hear.
All right. Anyone else have any thoughts, questions, concerns about this? Okay. Just some reminders. Again, pretty much anything you need for clubs. I've set up this link tree here. I'm going to put this so you can see. All of our links. This is the Zoom registration link for every monthly meeting, website resources, club listing, club manual, chartering form, dues payment, member roster template, form to appoint your associate, member resources, Young Dems, and then our Understanding Parliamentary Procedure presentation by Doug Case. These are all on here, Linktree. This is just a free service you can use and a lot of clubs use in place of a website to just kind of link everything you need. And then going back here, just a reminder, please provide the links for your Zoom meetings ahead of time for the party calendar. And Also, if you are meeting in person again, it probably still says your Zoom link. So if you have begun to meet in person, please provide that new location. You are required to do that for publication on the SCCDP website, especially if you're starting to vote on things again. And yeah, you can send that to calendar@scdemocrats.org. And if you aren't already shared, on your calendar item with the party, we use Google Calendar. It's a free, very easy online tool. If you can edit it yourself, so you don't need to ask anyone to do it for you. But if you aren't yet, you can email calendar@scdemocrats.org. Myself and the party staff will receive a copy of anything you send to that email or to the clubs@scdemocrats.org email. Any questions on that? Okay.
Cody, Steve in the chat asked if you could reshare the Linktree website again.
And this is in the emails I send out as well. I'm going to put this link in the chat. linktr.ee/demclubs. Okay, anything else on that note?
Tony, will we be able to make some announcements here?
Yes, you will after this.
Okay, sorry.
Anything else on this topic? Okay, we're going to go into other announcements. I'm going to ask folks to please raise your hand in the participants tab or the reactions button if you'd like to make an announcement. I'm going to go first real quick because I was asked to share this with the clubs, and I will send it out in a newsletter as well. But Run Women Run was asked to share. They are having a campaign training academy next month in July. These are the dates. I believe these are all on Zoom. So you can go to runwomenrun.org/academy and you can there get all the details and sign up. Run Women Run, if you're not familiar, it's basically an organization that trains women who are pro-choice, I believe, specifically to run for office, and you can see some of the topics and guest speakers, a lot of our favorite Democrats. So again, that's runwomenrun.org/academy. Okay, now I'm going to go into other announcements, and I'm going to set up a timer to make sure that we are fair here. Let's see. Doesn't look like we have too many. I'll give everyone 2 minutes. The first person I see whose hand's raised in the participants tab is Nadia. So if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to reach out and advise, beyond being the president of the East Lake Bonilla Democratic Club, I'm also involved with South Bay Pride. South Bay Pride is going to be August 21st. And if any of you would like a booth, hold on one second, baby. If any of you would like a booth to represent or to come out and register Democrats, you can go ahead and contact me direct and I will go ahead and hook you up with that. Also, if you know any candidates in the South Bay that are looking or that encompass the South Bay, you can go ahead and get them registered for that. On top of that, I am trying to start a swim time specific for LGBTQ youth to specify for trans youth so that they can swim in public spaces and feel comfortable without reproach, without violence. And we have actually got that off the ground. If anybody would like to sponsor that, there's $100 for 1 hour and we're paying just for the lifeguards, and then $200 for 2 hours or one session, and we will put your name all over our graphics, all over the page, so everybody will know who donated for that. And both times you can reach out to me. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna reset that, and then I see Kate.
Hello. Thank you so much, Kate Bishop, she, her, hers. I am the president of the San Diego Democratic Education Alliance. And I just wanted to invite everybody to our club meeting today at 2 p.m. As I noted in the chat earlier, we meet on Zoom and we will always meet on Zoom. We decided that it was easier to include people from all over San Diego County for our affinity club if we continue to meet online. And so we will be doing that. But today's meeting, we're really excited about. We're talking about AAPI issues in education from yesterday and today, and it will be moderated by the AAPI Dem Club president, Indranil Banerjee. And our panel is made up of some fantastic educators from the AAPI community, and we're talking about really important stuff. So if you would like to join us, I'm going to put the link in the chat for the Zoom, and we would love to see you there. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Susan, I feel like I saw you clap. I don't know if you were trying to raise your hand, so I want to make sure I get you.
I was. It was a hand attempt.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I'm Susan Marinan. I'm president of the Coronado Club. And as you know, we've been in the news, national and local, for the past week since June 19th. At which time some of Coronado residents, players, fans threw tortillas at the predominantly Hispanic team members from Orange Glen. This was an explicit act of racism. The club issued a statement saying so and indicating how deeply sorry we are for the hurt experienced by the parents, the children, and the community of Orange Glen and Escondido. I want to thank those of you who have reached out in support for us. Much to our horror, a club member, a Coronado club member, took the tortillas to the game. He has tendered his resignation, which I promptly accepted. We have a 4th of July parade coming up on July 3rd. The club will march. We are going to prepare signs which by parade rules have to be non-political. So we are preparing signs that say diversity, inclusion, equity, equality, truth, justice, love, united, together. And we're going to carry our message down Orange Avenue through Coronado on July 3rd. The staging area is between 1st and 2nd Street on I Street. I'll put that in the chat because you are all welcome to march with us to take our message of democratic values to the community and everyone who watches this parade. The club is doing its best to carry the message forward that we believe in respect for everyone. We believe in inclusion. And we are fighting right now a school board takeover attempt. So we need your help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. Really appreciate that. And then I'm going to go to Scotty.
Thank you. My update was first going to be the Hidden Valley Democratic Club of Escondido is a recently formed club, and we are hosting a no-cost event for anyone who's interested in joining us on July 17th in person. And I will put that into the chat here, including the link for registration. And not part of my planned comments, but I just wanted to express my appreciation to Susan and the Coronado Club for their efforts with regards to the latest events that have happened there. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. Would anyone else like to make an announcement? Katie?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Katie. I'm on the Club Dev Committee. I'm also recently the campaign coordinator for San Diego 350. And I wanted to let you know about a really important opportunity to weigh in on transportation for the future of all of San Diego. SANDAG is currently considering the regional transportation plan, and we are in the public comment phase. So there are a couple upcoming forums this week for both for North Inland San Diego County, as well as Wednesday for Central San Diego. So if you are in any of those regions and want to hear about all the amazing changes that are going to be happening to our transportation system in the next few decades, I am going to post a link in the chat. So thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks, Katie. Anyone else? Okay. I think that's it. So thank you, everyone, for being here today. If our Club Development Committee folks want to stay on, everyone else, have a great rest of your Sunday.